I'm so glad y'all are here. I'm gonna start because I want to give y'all as much time as possible. So let me share my screen. So today we're talking about posts and comments. And last week someone asked, like, is it super important for me to post and whatnot? And I'm gonna kind of help answer that question. My answer leans towards yes, but there's a little bit of a caveat. So this is where we are right here. Next week, we're going to be right here. This is all sponsored by Idle Courses Academy. That's why you have this lovely free seminar. I do talk about things from an instructional design standpoint because I am an instructional designer, but really what I'm talking about will help anyone pretty much in any industry. I'm just going to be using my perspective from an instructional designer. I am autistic and trauma informed. If you message me, I won't necessarily understand your tone. So I love emojis. I've been a professional writer for 12 plus years. So if I make it look easy, it's because I've got all of that background and I am a former educator. Cameras off, mute. We already have that kind of figured out with Zoom. This form in the corner, it will be in the corner for most of these. This is where I would like you to put your questions. At the end of this, I move to that form and we start answering questions there. And the session is being recorded. The chat is open for y'all. Awesome. Okay. So to begin, you are going to write some crappy posts. And you're going to write some crappy comments. This is writing. Any good writer and any good English teacher will tell you it's going to be crappy and you have to practice. And that is okay. One of the great things about building an audience on LinkedIn is that you start with a small audience. And so if you're posting and it's a small audience, you're going to write crappy stuff, but it's not going to be a whole lot of people seeing it. So as you grow that audience, your writing will improve, and that's ideal. Remember, last week I talked about how LinkedIn is this like party, this social space where we're supposed to be having conversations and whatnot. Posts and comments are a form of networking. They are a conversation that is being had. And there's a cat behind me. Will you take care of him? He's going to distract me. Thank you. So posts and comments, that is a form of networking, and networking is super important in whatever it is you're planning on doing, especially if it's for jobs. So I want you to consider your audience. You want to think about who they are, what they care about, what they're looking for, how you meet that. It could be your clients. So if you're a freelancer, thinking about what your clients are looking for, what they would want to see in posts. It could be a hiring manager and thinking about those things. It could be a colleague. Like, it needs to be a person that you're considering as you're posting things. For me, I'm often considering the neurodivergent job seeker who also is instructional design. I am still kind of getting that persona, that reader persona solidified for me. But it really helps to think about those things so that when I post, I can be helpful for those individuals, and things like this happen from it. One thing I'm seeing with some transitioning teachers, and I know that we have some transitioning teachers here, I'm seeing posts that are things like, oh, I'm so burnt out, this is really hard, or my principal is like micromanaging and things like that. I want you to consider that a hiring manager doesn't necessarily understand what a classroom is like anymore. And so that can start reflecting on you. So just be careful about how you phrase your experience in the classroom. It is totally okay to talk about burnout. It's totally okay to talk about how you're having to heal from it and things like that. But just kind of consider how it shifts when a hiring manager might read it and say like, oh, well, if they're still burnt out, maybe I don't want to hire them. Or if they can't handle having things shift all the time, they can't do this job. But really, y'all, that shift that happens in corporate is it's not as intense as teacher shifting, in my experience anyway. So just kind of keep that in mind. You want to be writing posts that talk, well, you want your message to be that you're running toward something, not that you're running away from something. So be excited about where you're going and where you're transitioning and those things. And sure, you can talk about the past, but you don't want it to be a like, get me out of here. I want to get out of here. Like this is you're running away from, you want to be running towards. So, okay, so a couple questions to consider when you are posting. I want you to think about what the in-person equivalent would be to this post. So I have seen posts that are like, yay, I have 500 connections. That's kind of a strange thing that you would say at a party, like to be in a party and go like, well, I have 100 friends. Like that's a really strange thing to say. That's more of this like announcement thing happening here. If you're gonna do that, maybe hey, I have 500 connections now, just to reintroduce myself to some of my new people who connected. Here's who I am. Versus like a, yay, I reached a number, because we want to have quality over quantity, remember? Inspirational quotes, there's not really a space that takes that into a conversation. So do consider how you want to, if you want to post an inspirational quote, how you want to do that in a way that serves that persona that we were just talking about. Yeah, you want to be having a conversation. And then let's see, what other things did I say here? Oh, and then there's like announcements of like, hey, this thing is happening. So I've had a lot of those posts for this seminar. And those are fine. It's even okay to say like, hey, I accomplished this thing, but do give your audience some context so that they can understand why that's meaningful. That can really help make that more of a conversation than just a like, I got a degree. So you also want to be thinking about how you're adding value back into this professional space. Value can be a lot of things. I am suspicious when people say things like, this isn't Facebook, don't bring that here. Because often I see it with marginalized communities, and not like for the random person posting about like their wedding. I don't think that you necessarily need to not be personal on LinkedIn. I would just make sure that how you are being personal on LinkedIn has a purpose. You want you want to consider, what do you want your reader to do with that information? And if it's just a, hey, I want you to know I'm a human and I got married and I'm really excited, but I'm also going to be off of LinkedIn for a while, that's great. That's fine. But just kind of consider that. Adding perspective, adding knowledge to the industry. So if you're learning something, talking about what you're learning, that's a really great thing to do. Challenging the status quo, sharing resources, yeah, and authentic validation. So I've had one mentee who posted about a rejection and kind of flipped it into her own, like, I'm gonna, I'm not cheer myself up, kind of a, hey, what's it called when you like pep yourself up? What's that, like a
pump yourself up?
Oh, a pep talk. There we go. So she wrote it into a pep talk, and actually like it took off. And then her would-be manager reached out and was like, I like your attitude. Like, let's talk. I have an opening. Like, I'd love to interview you for. So it's okay to be like vulnerable, and it's okay to be yourself. I would just consider how you want that information to be used and frame it that way. Consider what you're showing about yourself. So remember when I said like, hey, I got a degree, that's not going to be as meaningful as, I got a degree, here are the different things I learned, here are my key takeaways, here's why you should go to this school, here's what I plan to do with it. That gives people a lot more context and can create more connections and conversations. So yeah, the showing, what else did I say? Oh, so there's some individuals I see who post, and they post things like, hey, could someone share some resources on instructional design? And that's okay to maybe post in a group, but if it's a Googleable question, if you can Google it and find the answer, you're showing something else to hiring managers that you may not be considering. You want to show that you're proactive in getting your answers. So it might be something like, hey, I'm looking for resources in how to develop things for neurodivergent learners. I found these sorts of things, but all of them are for K-12. Like, is there anything out there for adult stuff that you have found? That shows that you have some initiative into the thing versus just going like, hey, I need some resources for something. So just kind of something to consider there. Oh, also, if you message someone and say like, hey, what's instructional design? That's like I've gotten those and I just don't have the bandwidth to answer all of them. Especially when I've written things that they could go and read, or there's plenty of stuff on YouTube. Whereas someone who goes like, hey, I really would like to know about your experience as an instructional designer and those sorts of things, that like is somewhere that a conversation can go. So you want to think about where and how these conversations can move and what you want people to do with the information that you're posting. And then, yeah, will you continue the conversation after you make the post? That's a really big one. Remember, this is a party. This is us talking in a space together about our industry, about our professional lives. And no one walks into a party, makes an announcement, and then just kind of leaves. Or like walks into a group of people, says something, and then just turns their back. That's like really strange. So if you're posting something and people start commenting, like you want to be responding to that and having a conversation with them. It's also really strange to see, like to be in a conversation and go something like commenting to follow. Like it's really odd. I get that it's part of the dynamic of the medium that we have, but you can also just save the post. Or you could say something like, you know, this is really interesting. I'm going to follow this so that I can learn these up like XYZ. I can see how this could matter in these ways. Like showing that you're thinking about the thing, not just like a following. Same goes for tags. If you're tagging someone in a conversation, like continue the thing. If you're like, hey, Mandy, this is something that you might be interested in because I know that you post a lot about neurodivergence. That's something I can move forward with a conversation. Whereas if you just tag me in something, I may not know. It also tells the the original poster that like there's something connecting me to that thing. So just another thing to keep in mind. Okay, so here is an example of one of my posts. So I'm not going to read it to you because I hate when people do that to me, but I am going to give you a little bit of time. The in-person equivalent to this interaction would probably just be me talking to someone in the industry. Like I'm talking about gamification. I do have my daughter in there, so there's some personal elements. This was a really fun game. Yeah. So that's the in-person equivalent would probably be me like talking about this experience and how it connects to the industry, right? How I'm adding value. There's some perspective there, like the fact that I'm going, hey, like gamification, if you want to gamify learning, like playing games is a great way to learn how to do that. Knowledge sharing, like, hey, this is a really good game to do to try to learn some things and maybe get something out of. I don't know about challenging the status quo per se. The game itself does, though. It really like changed my mind about a lot of things. Well, not changed my mind, but helped me recognize how much a mortician's work is like really valid and a lot of emotional labor I hadn't even considered. Sharing resources. So I do like link to the game developer and I link to Games for Change, which are two things that maybe someone would follow up and want to know more about. So I guess that's kind of a resource. Usually when I'm talking about resources, I'm talking about like posting an article you found or a YouTube or something like that. But I mean, this kind of does that. And there's some authenticity because I'm talking about my kid. It doesn't have to hit all of these. I'm just saying how one might see value in these different things. Okay, so what am I showing about myself? In this, I've got, that I'm a parent. I've got that I think really critically about the experiences that I have, that I make connections to things other people may not have seen. Games. So Games for Change is a thing that they have games that help people change their perspective on various issues, and that's something I've really cared about. So if you followed down that rabbit hole, it might have shared some things about me. And then, will I continue this conversation after someone comments? And I do. I try to always respond to comments. Sometimes I miss them, but all right. So this is a comment that was made to this post. And I asked her if I could use it, and she said yes. So that's why she's shown up here. But I really like her response, because her response adds something more to the conversation. Like, now she's pulling in decision making, empathy, ethics, all these things that I then realized, like, oh wait, like I hadn't even talked about the corporate greed element of this game. So this in-person interaction is very much a conversation. Now, if she had just said interesting or agree or thanks for that, I wouldn't really have a place to take that. And anyone who's following her and anyone who is having that show up in their feeds, they won't really have anywhere to take it. So so adding a perspective for sure. I would say this kind of challenges the status quo. Yeah, at least those two. Probably some others I'm not thinking about, but okay, so what she's showing about herself, she's showing about these things that matter to her, like ethics and empathy, decision making, all that critical thinking. These are things that matter to her, and because she's bringing it up, right? That she can think critically about things, that like, ooh, like maybe if I reached out to the developers, we could learn something more, like that. It shows her character, right? And that's kind of what you want to think about when you're posting and making comments, is that you're leaving these little hints about who you are as a person, which can sound really like intimidating and, oh my gosh, like, do I even want to comment or anything? But really, it's you will find your voice. So don't like freak out. Just take a deep breath and work through some of that. Okay, so what to write about? This can be a lot of different things. I would consider who your reader persona is. But just kind of off the top of my head and onto the slide here, the steps you're making towards your goal, and not just, hey, I now have this certification, but I have this certification and here are my 3 key takeaways. Here are the things that I have built because of this. Here's why I think this program is awesome. Like, showing that you've actually integrated the experience into what your skills are is huge. Accomplishments, takeaways. This is the same goes for badges. Like, if you ever post a badge or like a LinkedIn learning course or anything like that has some like automated, like, share with your network, I want you to customize that and share like why it mattered, what your key takeaways were, who, like, maybe even things you disagreed with the instructor. I've done that before. One of my LinkedIn learnings talked about having a timer that went off during a meeting so that everyone could get a turn talking. And I was like, oh, wow, that will really trigger like so much inside of me that I will never, ever want to speak ever. Like, I actually don't recommend this thing. That shows a lot, right? And then one of my favorite ones to tell mentees about is to answer job questions. Answer interview questions in your posts. I mean, I wouldn't go like, what's your greatest achievement? And then like answer like that. But here, let me show you basically what I'm talking about. You apply for a job. That job has skills. It has requirements. It has all of these beautiful keywords and things they care about. take one of those and think, what would a hiring manager ask to find out about this? And then answer that question. So, if the job ad says something about like innovative gamification background, right? Then one of the questions I'd probably see in an interview might be, tell me about one of your gamification designs and how it was successful and what you would change, right? So then my post might be, one of the most innovative designs I've ever done with gamification was using Dungeons and Dragons to create social skills and soft skills and writing and arithmetic stuff. It was really cool. I really enjoyed this thing. It's one of my favorite games. One of my favorite games, one of my favorite designs ever. Anyway, so take that job, find a couple things, and then you can post your answer to it. And if you're networking too, which I'm going to be talking about next week, there's a reason why this is the first thing, but I'm going to talk about next week. If you're networking, then like people at that company will then see your answer. And also you applied for the job itself. So like you're creating all of these connections with the thing you're doing, with the application that you've sent, with the skills you're building. It's all kind of adding up. I do this every time, y'all. Talk myself out of breath. Okay, awesome. It's question time. So I'm here for the hour. Please, all the questions you want, I'm going to answer them. But I am going to stop sharing. So I'm going to put this in the chat and then we can start answering things. So stop sharing. Here we go. Oh, awesome. Thank you for putting that in the chat for me.
You're welcome. And we have a few questions in there if you're ready to get started.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see. Oh, posting on social media gives me anxiety, especially long posts. Any tips on overcoming this, or is it absolutely essential to post?
That's right. I was going to answer this one in my thing and then I completely forgot. Okay, so if you feel nervous about posting, be an awesome commenter. Find the people that you want to network with at the company, at the clients you want to have, whoever those people are. Like you can follow them. You can click follow, and then you can even click in the corner. There's this bell you can click now that will notify you when they post. And then when they post, have a conversation with them and be an awesome conversationalist in the comments. And that will help you kind of build up that writing mentality. And then you can also turn around and take comments and make them your posts. I've done that. All right, what else?
Idea. I like it. I feel the same way. I have some anxiety when it comes to posting, especially if I know what I want to say, but it just, when writing it, it's not coming out quite right. So I feel you. Next question says, how should I format my posts? Is there a correct way?
So there's two lines of thought here. So the content developers, the LinkedIn influencers, all of them, well, not all of them, but a great deal of them will say to write enough so that people have to click that see more. Or they do this weird clickbaity white thing where it says I did it, and then there's a bunch of white space so that you have to click see more. I hate that. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. If it's going to be 5 lines and then I have to click more, and I've actually read those 5 lines and it's not the white clickbaity thing, I don't mind. But if it's one thought per line, I really hate that. Think about all the people who have arthritis in their hands and you are making them scroll to something that may not even matter. You're just taking advantage of this brain thing that we have of curiosity, oh, I'm curious about this. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do chunk things out for thoughts. Don't make one giant wall of text, because that is also really hard to read. But try not to hop on any of these fad things that you're seeing posted. because that's not your voice, that's someone else's. And that someone else may not even be writing that way anymore and just got copied over and over again. So that's kind of my school of thought, is like you should be writing normal, like paragraphs and, you know, periods and stuff. And if you want to throw in emojis, like I like that too. But yeah, just kind of consider the user end of it, and making someone click and scroll to like maybe find out like I'm engaged is like not cool.
We had a similar question that was saying some of the things that you were touching up on. So there are a lot of really long posts out there, and they seem to feature shorter sentences with lots of white space, but they want to know if there was a good way to format for readability, which is kind of what
Yeah. Yeah, which is basically the same thing. If you were talking about like hashtags, the screen reader, okay, so a couple things. Screen readers will read the whole hashtag as one gobbledygook word, unless you have capital letters where there's like, if your hashtag is like do it messy, the D is capital, the I is capital, the M is capital. Otherwise, the screen reader will read like dotted messy, right, for the person using the screen reader. So keep that in mind. Also, if you are using capital letters to emphasize things, it is reading an acronym to the person who is using the screen reader. So if you're trying to make emphasis with all caps, they will suddenly hear those letters rather than that word. So I'm trying to change how I make emphasis so that screen readers will be more accessible for people. But yeah, so break up your texts as paragraphs, like so that it's readable that way. If you want to make one line emphasis, I would maybe have one line, not a bunch of lines that are one line, but like, you know, paragraph, one line. That feels fine to me. Yeah, that's my answer there. I kind of like wandered around a little bit there, but I hope that answered that.
What are the benefits and drawbacks of reacting to posts versus commenting on them?
Okay, so I don't really like reactions, because if someone said something like, I got laid off, and you went, that like that doesn't mean much. Whereas if someone says like, I got laid off, you go like, wow, that sounds hard. Let me know how I can support you. Like that communicates something. Everyone's interpretation of those reactions are a little bit different. There's a content developer person I follow who thinks that the curious reaction is passive aggressive. And so if that person thinks that they're curious is passive aggressive, then like that's not great, right? I much prefer having words there, and you can always put in emojis. Another drawback is if anyone's following you, it will show up in their feed that you reacted to the thing, but that doesn't tell them much about you as a person. I react to things because I know that I have mentees looking for jobs, and if I like a job, it will show up in their feed and then they can apply for it. So I have a strategy for why I'm using reactions. And if I were using reactions as like, if I was trying to find a job myself, I probably would stop using reactions, because I want people to know about me and to know what I care about and what I'm thinking about when I'm reading something. So just kind of keep that in mind. And LinkedIn is trying to kind of push you that way, because now like you can click like the like button or whatever, and like in the comments, LinkedIn will go like, hey, tell so-and-so why you liked this. I wouldn't go like, I liked this because that feels a little weird, but I do appreciate the like nudge to like, hey, say something on top of just reacting. I care more about the conversations that I have with people than about the number of likes I get, because that's quality. I mean, it might hurt to still not get any reactions on something, but I'm like shifting my perspective on what I'm prioritizing, basically.
That's some great feedback. The next one we have is I'm new to ID and spending free time building portfolios or searching and applying for jobs. So I feel like all my posts are related to my job hunting or skill building. Skill building. Is that a bad idea? Should I try to diversify my subject matter when posting, or is it okay to keep it skill building and job hunting centered?
I think it's okay. I would be concerned if your posts started being like, I've applied to 100 jobs and haven't gotten any interviews. What's wrong? Like, what's wrong with me or what's wrong with them? Like that tells, even if it's true, and even if there's nothing wrong with you and it is all the company, and like I am likely to believe that it is the company and their process or whatever, this creates this like, oh wait, why aren't people interviewing her? Like it creates this suspicion. So like don't fall into that trap. But I don't think it's wrong to say like, hey, I have an interview for this thing and I'm really excited and here's how I'm prepping. Don't make posts that are like, hey, I got my first ID interview and what questions should I ask? Because that shows a hiring manager that like, first off, you should be Googling that because that's a Googleable question. But it also shows a hiring manager like, ooh, wait, it's her first interview in ID. Like, no, I don't know. So just kind of be careful about what you're doing for job wise. But if you use this like job framework that I gave you with like, here's the skill that's in the job ad, here's what would be asked to figure out that skill. Now the answer is that post. Like that's a really good way to like, I'm showing skills while also amplifying my job application. I think it's totally fine to be talking about industry stuff and like learning about it and posting about that and saying like, I learned about this. Don't leave it there though, because it needs to be, I learned about this and here's why it matters and here's how it's changed my designs. I even tell mentees that they should post their designs. Like if they make something, they should post it, which I'm sure they're terrified of because Mandy 2020 would have been terrified of that idea. But then you get feedback. And if you get feedback, then you can turn around and go like, awesome, thank you so much for this feedback. Look, I've now made something new and better with that feedback. And then you're showing hiring managers that you know how to implement feedback without taking it personal. So that's a good thing.
Before and afters are always a great thing to show.
Always,
yes,
always.
Yes. Last week you mentioned something about it being important to post on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Somebody wants to know why.
I'm from Idle. Yeah, that's from Idle. So Richard Von de Bloom, I think is his name. He has like a copyright sign in front of his name in LinkedIn. That's odd to me, but like that'll tell you that's the guy. He did a lot of research with a bunch of other companies and his company to figure out like when would be the most effective for an audience, when like how many hashtags you should have, like all this really detailed data, and then he sent it out in a report. And I happened to see that report in my LinkedIn feed because I curate my LinkedIn feed so that it like supports the things I want to develop. And in that, it said Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Now, that's not necessarily going to always stay. I'm going to be continuing to follow this individual in the hopes that any new reports will come my way. But right now, that's what the report said. So that's my recommendation. If you can't do every day.
Our next question asks about screen readers. Is there a good site to see examples of like screen reader text?
Ooh, I don't know, but that is a really good question. And maybe I will post about that when I've done some research. Screen reader text resource. So a lot of the screen reader, universal design stuff that I have learned, like the only reason I'm ever considering someone with arthritis is because someone posted like, hey, stop doing this because it hurts my hand. So I have individuals I follow that I'm like, oh, I'll start and I can incorporate that into what I do so that it can be more accessible. So some of this I've just kind of picked up because people are like, hey, when you post a hashtag like this, I just read gobbledygook. Could everyone please do it this way? And it doesn't hurt me to like shift what I'm doing just a little bit so I can be more accessible to people. But yeah, I will look into that. That's a good question.
All right, our next question is a little bit about networking and transitioning teachers. There are some posts that seem to be for networking and a lot that seem to be targeted at transitioning teachers. The like comment if you're looking for a job and comment if you're a recruiter looking to hire, those can sometimes have hundreds of replies. Is this actually effective networking?
No, it's not. So anyone who's like, I've got 400 recruiters in my network, comment what you're looking for and they'll see it. And like everyone who's saying that, they're trying to get more engagement on their platform. And I think it's a really messed up way to get engagement because it gives everyone this hope that like, oh yeah, if I like this recruiter's comment, that recruiter will go look at my profile and like send me a job that might fit my way. Like and it makes you feel like you have progress in your job hunt because you did a thing like, oh yay, like I reacted. And so now that'll turn into something. But no, the only things that like turn into something are the quality conversations that you have with people. So all of that, I'm just like, spend your time somewhere else. Spend your time on like the hiring manager who goes like, hey, my team is hiring for this, and go comment there and say like, oh, wow, I see that you're looking for this, this, and this. I have these skills and I'd love to chat with you more about that. I've applied, by the way, like those sorts of things. I have seen some that are like, hey, we're hiring this. And people go like, I applied or interested. Don't do that. Have a conversation. Say those things. Like if you were to walk up to this person, what would you say about your application, about wanting to know more? What would you say? And that needs to be the comment, not I applied, because that puts the work back on them to go look at the thing, go look at the portfolio, go look at the profile, and everyone's really busy. So like make those connections for people so that they don't have to work as hard to see how awesome you are.
Those are all really good points. I like that. Making it more about conversations. Definitely. One of our, this is the last ones that we have on here. So maybe we'll get a few more in, but it says, I heard that impressions were very important than reactions. So example, like 5 reactions versus 850 impressions. So
impressions are how many feeds your post shows up in. So if I make a post and excuse me, and someone else reacts to it, it will then show up in someone else's feed. Like if that person is being followed, then the post will show up in that person's feed. And so like it can spread out like that. So impressions are just how many like faces you got to look at your thing, but not necessarily people reading, not necessarily people stopping the scroll to actually see what it is. That's part of why I keep pushing like comment. When people comment, talk back. Like it needs to be a conversation. Because if you're just like in their wall of feed and it's not creating a conversation, like who cares about the impressions? You could have like 4,000 impressions for one thing and nothing actually comes of it. It's just everyone really liking the things, and then you have a post that got popular but it didn't lead anywhere for you or for the people that you're working with. Like a lot of my posts I'm posting because I want to support other people, and so if I'm supporting those other people, I want those conversations to be happening. So yeah.
we have another one in, and it's more about company and job hunting. But do you want to go ahead and answer? And it's got a little bit about posts too.
Yeah, we've got like 20 minutes and there's so many questions, so go for it.
If a hiring manager post they are hiring, would you engage a conversation in that post, or do you reach out to them via connection or message?
I think you could do a mix. Like I have seen it work really well posting. I've seen it work really well like connecting and sending like that connection request that's very specific. That connection request shouldn't be like, hey, I saw this job and I applied. We should talk. Like, no. Make the connections for them. I applied to this thing. Here's why I'm interested. I'd love to talk more. And your here's why I'm interested is that like, here are the key skills that connect me to this job. It's not a, oh my gosh, you're like 5 minutes away from my house and I applied. Like, I would love this job because it would work for my commute. Like, it's about them. It's about them and giving them value. So yeah, so I've seen it work in the posts. I've seen it work in comments. I've seen it fail in both. So you might just try a mix and see what fits, and the things that like work for you, repeat them. It's an experiment.
Okay, we have another question. Woo.
That was me, sorry.
It says, sorry to piggyback on impression questions. What if they only click on your links and not react? Does that affect impressions, or does it not or does it not? Trying to get the rest of it. I can't say. Or does it not matter?
So impressions are just how often your post shows up in someone's feed. That's it. If they click on it, then like, sure, LinkedIn goes, oh, awesome. This was for sure an impression. That's another thing. Impressions are generalizations. It's how much they think it's gone out. It's not here's all, like it went out to 4,000 people. Like, no, it's how much they think it went out. So I don't think really it matters. I think the engagement is the thing you want to like dive into. If I had like 20,000 impressions, I would rather care about the 20 comments than that impression thing.
Here's a new one. It's good.
Yeah.
What's your view on the controversial opinion posts? I guess if somebody has a controversial opinion. I saw one of these recently.
So I think that it would be naive to think that we shouldn't be addressing injustices that are happening in the workplace. And some people would deem that controversial, but I say it's being human and saying like, hey, the world should be a kinder place, and here are ways that like racism, sexism, ableism is showing up. Here are the things I care about, and being forward about that. If I'm posting about those things, I'm very likely to be filtering out companies that don't value those things. And I would rather do that. I would rather be filtering out the companies that are like, oh, wow, like Mandy's really going to be pushing on this whole like neurodivergent thing. Like, I don't think she's going to be happy here. Or even like, we don't really want to, like, she's autistic. We don't really want to hire her. I'd rather that them filter themselves out. If it's a post that harms and someone says like, hey, this harmed me the way you said this, or the way like I need you to understand this thing. If someone's doing the emotional labor to call you out so that you can, adjust and maybe self-reflect, I'm okay with that too, because apologizing on the internet never happens. And I would rather be the one who goes, you know what, like I've sat with that and you're right. The way I phrased that was harmful and I apologize. Or I never thought of it that way. Wow, like I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Because if people are giving you that emotional labor, we should honor that by self-reflecting. Now there are trolls. There are people who are gonna just like stir and stir and stir. but you can kind of tell the quality when that happens, because it starts like being about you rather than about your message, rather than about like coming back to a kinder space. I'm happy to delete them and block them. Like, no, I don't need to have like I don't need to waste my time trying to convince someone not to be a troll. But having a honest conversation about problems that we are having, that hopefully helps make the world a better place. And that's what I want. So that will continue to be some of the things that I post. I hope that was helpful.
I think it was very helpful.
It can absolutely be terrifying. Like, it can be absolutely terrifying. Anytime I'm posting about autism, there is like a scared person inside me going like, this will be the day I'm fired. Like, that is what happens. And I have to sit with that and go like, no, I want my daughter's world to be better and safer. And I want her to be able to say she's autistic without it being something weird. And so I'm going to push forward, as terrifying as it is. But it's getting less so because, yeah.
I have to say, I love your honesty and I love the way that you share. Mm-hmm. Is it a good idea to run a poll once in a while for a conversation?
Oh, polls feel really easy. Polls feel like more that quantity aspect. I think there's a way to use it in a strategic way. So for instance, one of my first polls, I said like, hey, all you transitioning teachers, tell me, is the corporate world slower, faster, the same, or just different? Like what is the pace compared to teacher? Like teacher pace? Like, tell me the comparison there. So then I got a bunch of votes, and most of them were like, corporate is so much slower than teachers. But I got comments, and that's the thing I wanted to like respond to. And then it was also really validating to go like, okay, so the thing I'm experiencing at work now, the slowness that I'm experiencing, that's not just me. That's me recognizing that like my teacher pace was way too burnouty fast. So I would make your polls meaningful, which means there's probably going to be fewer of them. Like the whole like, are you a tea person or a coffee person? That doesn't feel like a quality conversation to me. Like, I would like, that's the small talk side of things that I just don't really care about. But if it's, I don't know, like I have this design that I really care about, and I have like 3 different ideas. Here are my ideas. Which one would you go for and why? That feels like a stronger conversation poll thing. So just be strategic about it.
All right, you ready for the next one?
I am.
All right, this one is a little bit back to our profiles, but it's a pretty good question. But I delete certifications that are not relevant to the field I want to get into. I want to get into instructional design, and one of my certifications was for Schoolology. Should I delete it because it's too teachery?
Schoolology is a learning management system. Don't get rid of that. Instructional designers use learning management systems. Now, when someone says, have you used a learning management system? You can be like, yes, I'm in fact certified in the one that my current employer uses. Don't get rid of that.
We have another one. It says, I'm sorry if this is off topic. But do you have any advice on how to answer gender and ethnicity questions on job applications? Does it hurt to prefer not to answer, or does it hurt if I answer, but I'm not a minority?
I really don't know. Like, I'm not a minority. I do qualify under the disabilities thing. Like, do you have a disability or whatever? And I kind of waffle between whether or not to answer it. I want to believe the data is being used to figure out DEI stuff. But whether or not a company does, you also have no way to prove whether or not a company decided not to go with you because of that answer. So I kind of waffle back and forth. As for gender, I would love to see more, hey, what are your pronouns? I would be wanting to apply to more places that had that, because that means that, people potentially feel safer, and I want that psychological safety, even though my pronouns are she and her. So yeah, I don't quite have an answer there. I go back and forth whenever I'm applying to things. Yeah. Do you have an answer to that, Chastity? Like, I feel like there's no really good answer about that one.
It's a hard one. And I think
Yeah.
it's a personal preference. It's really whatever you're comfortable with. I don't think you can really, unfortunately, go wrong, because like you were talking about before, if you were, weeding out companies because you're posting about something, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you put what answer you're comfortable with, but then you're not, it's really hard.
Yeah.
I think it's whatever person.
Yeah. And then on the other side, you have to consider like how much financial stability that person has to wait while filtering out companies. Like if your bills are coming and you need a job, like filtering out companies is like not really helpful because you need a job and you need to pay bills. So I recognize there's a level of privilege in saying I like the fact that my posts filter out people. So
it's a very good point.
Yeah.
There is another one, not a question, just a heartfelt thanks to both of you for running these sessions. Mandy's offering of her time and talent to help us is invaluable. And what you shared tonight is making me braver about posting, having actionable strategies for commenting, and posting feels like just what I need to make that leap.
Yay, good.
That gave me chills. Very good job, whoever posted that. I like that. Good job. Yep. And that was the last one so far to come in.
Awesome. I'm so glad I could hold space for y'all and answer your questions, and they feel braver. That's the whole point of all this. So that makes me feel really good. I look forward to seeing your comments on things and your posts.
Yep, you did a great job, Mandy. Thanks for your time and answering everybody's questions.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.